I've decided to include my introduction slide in this lesson. I want parents to understand what it what the processes are in my class. So when the students come in, they get out their agenda, they write their homework. Previously, they were writing their objective. Our new agendas, our new spiraled agendas do not have a place for the objective, so students are just writing their homework now. Then they put their agenda in their take-home folder away. Now I was giving them 3 minutes to do this. It's been shortened to 2 minutes. They have a plastic placeholder that opens them to the correct week. They open it up, they write their homework, they close their agenda, and they put it away. It is not a lengthy process. The students should be focused. They come in, they sit down, ready to learn, ready to work. I'm only given a certain amount of minutes every day for my English lesson, and so I try and maximize our time in class. And it's important to get the homework written down so parents know what's happening and the students are aware of what they need to do, but this can't be a major part of our lesson. So their banana, I call it their banana yellow English folder because I was trying to differentiate between the folder that they take home. I want to make sure that they're not putting their English stuff in their take home folder and vice versa. That is why we immediately put our take home folder away. We only get that out when we need to put something in it. So now they've put their take home folder away and they've taken out their English folder. Their bell ringer, they had 5 minutes to do this, and they needed to turn the fragment into a sentence. And this was the fragment right here, Hurricane Andrew. So they had to turn it into a sentence. This is the subject. Obviously, Hurricane Andrew is a thing. So they needed to, it's also a proper noun. They needed to capitalize hurricane. They needed to capitalize Andrew, and they needed to add a predicate to this fragment, meaning what did Hurricane Andrew do? Then they would add punctuation. My example was Hurricane Andrew was a dangerous storm that destroyed many lives. So what it did was it was a dangerous storm that destroyed many lives. The two verbs here was because just existing is a verb. I am, you are, it was. And then destroyed. So that was a second sentence. Here's the example. People in low-lying areas were ordered to evacuate. So I wanted to make sure that they understood the difference between a fragment and a sentence. A fragment is either a subject or a predicate, but it's not both. Excuse me. So this sentence was on their paper. Lafayette is a city in Louisiana. And they had to circle the subject and then write an S over it. Then they had to underline the predicate and write a P over it. This slide was on my board, so as we were talking about it, I was circling Lafayette and writing an S over it. Then I circled is a city in Louisiana, and we put the punctuation where it was supposed to be. We did the same for this sentence. And for this previous sentence, I asked them, what did I miss, to see if they could see that I missed the punctuation in that sentence. Then we have this sentence here, and then they had to do this one independently. And after they did this one independently, we went back and we looked at is Spanish and settlers, are both those words part of the subject? A lot of the sentence students either picked Spanish or settlers. I had to explain that Spanish describes where the settlers were from. So Spanish settlers is the entire subject. What did they do? They influenced the culture in Louisiana. Again, we circled the subject, underlined the predicate, and made sure that it had capital letters where it was supposed to be, which would be at the beginning and proper nouns, and then punctuation. We read this section from the text, right? We read it very closely, and we were looking for vivid language or descriptions, right? So swirled and faster and churned and compact and evacuate. All of those are words that help us picture um, what was happening in our mind. When you can't see the scene, like we couldn't see the actual winds moving or churning or how the hurricane moved, but the author uses descriptive language like swirled, faster, churned, and compact to help us picture it in our mind. So that's descriptive language. Those are the descriptions. We talked about the words and phrases used to describe the storm. And then we talked about what does this effect have on our understanding of what was happening. And we decided that the words help the author to describe just how powerful, frightening, and devastating Hurricane Andrew was. Those are really big words. I'm giving them a larger vocabulary. Some of the students knew what the word devastating was, but some of them did not. Um, so let's move this up a little bit. I don't know what happened. Here we go. So in this slide right here, sorry about that. Um, we have for 250 miles from Fort Lauderdale to Key West, people were ordered to evacuate all low-lying areas along the coast. How does this help you understand how devastating the storm was? Well, they had fill in the blanks. Even with all the technology, scientists could not predict where the hurricane was going to make landfall. It made it dangerous for thousands of people. We looked at a map and we to determine how far 250 miles were. We also talked about if you were to get in your car and go 60 miles an hour, it would still take you how many hours? 4 hours to get 250 miles. So if you drove in your car for 4 hours, that is how many people in that distance had to evacuate. So I read from their text, and in order for me to know that the students are really reading the words, because they need to hear it, they need to hear how a book is read. So I model reading for them. And they also, I want them to look at the word. So they're seeing the word and hearing the word. So I had them underline the words in their paper copy of the text. So I knew that they were following along with me. Um, we completed a homework quiz. It was worth 10 points. I took that quiz. I did not grade it. We retaught the information. There was too many students that were struggling with noun, verb, subject, and predicate. So we're just going to keep working on that and then we'll test again later. Here again, we have fill in the blanks. What did people experience as Andrew made landfall? I showed them a video from Hurricane Andrew, several home videos that were taken of the storm, some short videos that were posted on local news stations and national news stations. We looked at these pictures. And we talked about the struggle people faced, how they had to come in with their suitcases and collect the things that they could save. The people lost toys and they lost pictures and they lost everything, and they ended up walking out with whatever they could carry from their debris in suitcases. And then here's another fill in the blank. These pictures help us understand what the people who experienced the hurricane actually went through. The secondhand account in words sounds scary, but the pictures make it real. And it's a secondhand account because the author of the book was collecting stories from other people who actually experienced the hurricane. I introduced them to figurative language. the type of figurative language we've been working on is simile. And a simile is when you compare two things using like or as. So in order for something to be a simile, it must have the word as to compare two things. It must have the word like to compare two unlike things. And then I gave them an example and asked them if keeping this information up on the screen, could they identify a simile? And in this example, the wind sometimes shrieking, sometimes growling like a rushing freight train. So it's comparing the sound of the wind to that of the sound of a rushing freight train. We then played Gimkit, which is just a video game where the students they rack up points by answering questions about the material that we've learned already. And then every time they answer a question correctly, they get points. Once they have a certain amount of points, they can play the video game and they can play it until they run out of points. Then they have to answer more questions. So we talk about how we leave class. The yellow folders need to be on one side of the desk neatly because they share the desk with 3 other students. Then the books go on the other side of the desk because multiple people use those books. And then step 1 means they stand up. Step 2 means they stand behind their chair and tuck it in. Step 3 means that they line up. And I always remind them, don't forget their bag, lunch, and water. We don't always have time to let them go back to another class to get water or a pencil if they forgot it. So they need to be responsible and keep track of their things as they move throughout the day. So that was lesson 2. And again, we are interrupted by multiple things such as assessments and placement quizzes. Some of these concepts are difficult. Anything that is abstract, like inferencing or theme or main idea, even like new skills like doing Ripple where they're thinking, writing, talking, sharing, all of those things take time. So this lesson took more than one day to complete. I'm giving you the overview. The actual work was more in depth. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me.